So if 2024 was the year we reclaimed that conversation around midlife, 100%, then I feel like this 2025 is the year we set new standards, right? We saw the black box warning finally question menopause on national TV. Some of the brightest mindsets in neuroscience and the menopause space and longevity all joined the conversation. This wasn't just another year in women's health, it was a big turning point. If it wasn't for a lot of listeners out there demanding for better care, demanding to be heard, signing the black box warning, we wouldn't be where we are now at the end of 2025. So welcome back to the Founder Series, where we talk about the business of medicine, the biology of midlife, and the future of care for women who refuse to settle for. I'm Dr. Rebbecca Hertel. I'm a board-certified osteopathic family medicine physician, a certified menopause specialist, and founder of Osteopathic Midlife Health. This is where we see patients virtually in 10 states: California, Florida, Illinois, Kentucky, Minnesota, New Jersey, New York, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Vermont. As I close out my first year leading this practice, I want to share the 5 biggest breakthroughs that define women's health in 2024 and as we end 2025 and then look forward to 2026 and beyond. Because the landscape is changing fast and the women deserve to know what's ahead. So as we move along here, when I opened Osteopathic Midlife Health alone in January, I wasn't really trying to disrupt anything. I was transitioning out of another business and wanted to keep what I had built as an independent contractor. I really enjoyed it. I wasn't trying to build a movement. I wasn't trying to take on the healthcare system because, as you know, I still am hybrid. I still work inside that system. I wasn't trying to start some giant midlife revolution. I just really wanted to create a space for better care, for different care, for a space specifically for midlife women, for fuller conversations, for women to really feel seen and heard in a way that in the transitional insurance-based model, we just were never allowed to do those things. I've almost been practicing medicine for 20 years. I knew that I didn't want to give that up. I knew that you can't treat these types of complex conversations in 15-minute appointments or even 20-minute appointments. And, I really wanted women to feel heard, to be able to not be rushed to talk to me about their journey, to create this, smaller niche community of patients. Perimenopause and menopause are not quick visits and they're not check boxes. And we really shouldn't be making women feel that way either. These really are chapters of women's lives, right? They can be long ones. They can be messy ones. They require context. They require a lot of nuance and real follow through. And so, you can't be treating this like kind of an in and out urgent care approach. And so when I decided to continue with my practice, launching it on my own, it really was about just keeping that part of medicine that I never knew existed, but I really loved. And I really didn't understand that it was a part of entrepreneurship, although now I do. And I really, really enjoy it, even though the hours can sometimes not be so forgiving, but it gives you the freedom to listen instead of race the clock, to educate, to take the time to educate, to not apologize for, a schedule that you don't have any control over, and the freedom to practice medicine the way that, I feel that women deserve instead of the way that insurance companies tell us we're supposed to do it. We also have a freedom to build, partnerships with our patients and not just transactions. So, and now almost a year later, I've seen firsthand what happens when you blend evidence with empathy and can do it on your own terms, advance science with real conversation, and just help precision medicine with that lived experience of women who've been dismissed for decades. So, helping women understand their hormones, to optimize their metabolism, to improve their sleep, to strengthen their bones, to rebuild their muscle, to address their sexual wellness and walk through midlife with better clarity instead of fear. I think one of the most exciting things is not just what's happening inside my practice, but what's happening everywhere right now. 2024 felt like was this year that women's health finally started catching up to women themselves, right? And maybe 2025 is shaping up to be the year women really started leading the conversations entirely. From seeing FDA panel openly discuss menopause treatment without stigma, new non-hormonal therapies approved with real data, seeing spaces of like longevity conferences highlighting ovaries, muscle mass, metabolic aging, sleep. And these things aren't just side topics, but they're really central drivers of long-term health and wellness. Kind of seeing this narrative shift from menopause is something you survive to midlife is a strategic turning point and maybe the most powerful shift of all. Women thought leaders, clinicians, researchers, creators, entrepreneurs all stood up and claimed their space. So it's really exciting. Just key drivers, colleagues, we all just building companies, writing books, running research labs. This is just really exciting time. Um, taking a minute to talk about even women educating millions online, right? These medical influencers of education and giving back in a way because we know social media just has such a far-ranging, far more impactful on a bigger area of women trying to educate regarding just their simple basic anatomy, physiology, how your cycles work, how they're changing now and why, because we weren't told all of those things. Women are using their voice to push back on stigma, pseudoscience, on misinformation, on the idea that menopausal women should quietly fade into this background. If 2024 was the year women stopped waiting for permission, 25 was the year that we stopped asking for it altogether. And these women thought leaders aren't just emerging, they're multiplying, which is amazing and so fantastic. We're seeing just a wave of female physicians stepping into entrepreneurship because they want something different. The system hasn't kept up. They don't feel that it's serving their needs the way that they want. So we're seeing scientists and clinicians collaborating instead of competing. We need to see more collaboration, however. We're seeing educators on YouTube, on podcasts, on TikTok, on global stages, reaching millions with actual evidence and real compassion. Yes. Are there still a lot out there, a lot of misinformation out there? Yes. And the hope is that those of us that are on these platforms spreading evidence-based information but also nuanced information that we're hoping that it dampens that misinformation sound. Because really, women over 40 are the most influential, most experienced, most resilient demographic in society. We lead households, families, companies, care systems, communities. We drive consumer spending. We shape culture. We keep everyone alive. But remember, for decades, our own health was treated as an afterthought. I feel like 2024 cracked that open and 2025 is the year that that whole dam breaks, right? We're seeing investment in women's health, real investment, startups, funding rounds, new technology, AI-driven diagnostics, at-home testing companies, menopause clinics, longevity frameworks built for women and not retrofitted for male data. And we're seeing research finally include women instead of excluding them. More is needed. More. We're seeing clinical guidelines evolve. We're seeing retractions of outdated warnings and the rise of nuance over fear. And despite all this momentum, the most powerful change isn't in the labs or the boardrooms. It's in the women themselves. Women who are saying things like, I'm just done being dismissed. I'm done being told this is normal. I'm done being told this is just part of aging, that you just can't multitask. I'm done surviving. They want to thrive. They're saying, I deserve better care, better science, better conversations. And that shift, collective, unapologetic, and overdue, is the real revolution. And that's one of the reasons why this exists, this founder series, to bring you into this moment, to share the stories and the science, the wins, the failures, the lessons, the leadership, and the path forward, to show you what's possible when women are given the space, the tools, and the respect they've always deserved. So we're not just talking about perimenopause or hormones or symptoms, but we're talking about, our lifespan, our health span, our longevity, for the buzzword right now. We're talking about agency. We're talking about women building their second half stronger, clearer, healthier, bolder, and more intentional than the first. So for me, I started osteopathic midlife health as this like tiny corner of freedom. And now it's really fun that it's much part of a bigger movement, one built by women, led by women, empowered by women who refuse to shrink at the exact moment their wisdom is the strongest. So Here's to 24, the year the world finally listened. And here's to 2025, the year women take the mic, rewrite the script, and shape the future of midlife health from the inside out. So, 5 breakthroughs that define women's health. Number 1, hormone therapy reframed. And the US FDA, our Food Drug Administration, listened. So in July of 2025, the FDA convened an expert panel on menopause and hormone therapy. And the US Food and Drug Administration. So as a result, the agency initiated the process to remove or revise the longstanding black box warning from many menopausal hormone therapy products. These containing estrogen, at least for certain formulations and when used under specific conditions. We have to remember that there are many other formulations of estrogen, and estradiol versus ethinyl estradiol versus conjugated equine estrogen. Importantly, the FDA noted the change does not apply universally. For example, systemic estrogen alone products will still contain warnings about endometrial cancer risk in some contexts. So why does this matter? The original warning stemmed from the WHI trial, which mostly included older postmenopausal women, but also using a specific hormone formulation, which is not representative of all of the different types of estrogen products that are out there, especially local vaginal estrogen. So as a result, many clinicians avoided offering hormone therapy when it might be beneficial. So there are many women who suffered because of that black box warning. They missed out on their opportunity to be treated, to have their symptoms controlled, and the amount of clinicians that missed being educated on perimenopause, on menopause, on hormone therapy alone. So gone, completely gone. It just didn't make sense to me that although the study came out, why we would stop teaching clinicians. But that's what happens. So now we have generations of clinicians that we have to teach. I was one of them. I was not taught. So the hope is that this new framing allows a more nuanced, individualized discussion about risks and benefits based on age, time since menopause, formulation, dosing, and delivery method. It's going to be that heart-to-heart discussion with a well-informed, educated clinician and their female patient. So, the takeaway from midlife care here is that hormone therapy is no longer a one-size-fits-all. It never was, in all honesty. But it's a tool whose risk-benefit balance depend heavily on when, how, and for whom it's used. And this paves the way for more personalized, evidence-based menopausal care. Number 2, the gut hormone axis is beginning to be taken seriously. So there's more emerging research that reinforces that the gut microbiome influences metabolism of, estrogen metabolism, bone health, contributing to what some people will call the second endocrine system. So, for example, some studies have linked changes in the gut microbiota composition in postmenopausal women to alterations in bone mineral density and metabolism. Lower estrogen levels after menopause may disrupt microbial diversity, increase gut permeability, and inflammation. These are all factors that negatively affect bone and metabolic health potentially. This also makes nutritional and lifestyle strategies. For example, we need fiber-rich diets, fermented foods, prebiotics and probiotics, adequate protein, and perhaps even this future estrobolome-targeted therapies more than just wellness trims. They become physiologic tools for supporting these hormone balance, bone health, metabolic resilience. So takeaway from midlife care here is supporting gut health isn't optional fluff. It's likely a foundational pillar in how we help women transition through menopause more smoothly. And number 3, bone health has emerged as a new longevity metric. I'm still floored every day when I counsel my patients on the risks of osteoporosis. And I know you've heard me say it before. 1 out of 2 women will suffer an osteoporotic fracture. 60% of hip fractures are female. 30% of those hip fractures will not survive their first year. And 60% of those hip fractures don't go back to pre-fall function. Every time I say those, I'm just like, how are we not making a bigger deal out of this? So bone density continues to be framed as more than just fracture prevention. It's increasingly viewed as a marker of overall aging and long-term health. Postmenopausal bone loss remains a major issue in women. We know that MHT remains one of the most effective interventions to protect bone mass and reduce fracture risk, especially when initiated appropriately. It is FDA approved for the prevention of osteoporosis. Meanwhile, growing evidence on the gut bone axis offers pathways to support bone health beyond hormones via the microbiome, nutrition, lifestyle, and resistance training, right? We know that. Protein. So it enables this more broad view to align bone health with metabolic health, muscle health, and overall span, right? Reinforcing that strength and skeletal integrity are central to thriving in midlife. So takeaway here is bone health is rising from what's nice to just monitor it. We'll wait till you're 65 to an essential vital sign, especially for women. Proactive strategies, I would say now matter more than ever. So controversial or not, this longevity science is finally starting centering women. At least we're talking about it more. The reexamination of hormone therapy plus growing interest in the gut hormone bone next reflects kind of like this broader shift, right? Like longevity medicine is beginning to account for female physiology. I think all medicine is, not just extrapolate from male or mixed cohorts. I think that as scientific attention widens, that midlife women are increasingly recognized not as declining demographic, but as a critical inflection point for long-term health span. All right, let's see what else here. This reframing hopefully encourages maintenance and optimization, not just symptom management. It's essential. Like we need to have a shift of prevention. We need to stop chasing cures. And, this emphasis becomes sustaining strength, metabolic resilience, flexibility, bone density, hormone balance, gut health, and overall vitality as we're leading into those years. So the takeaway here is midlife, perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause, however you want to say it. I mean, once you're in menopause, you're in menopause forever. Some like to say postmenopause. That this is not the beginning of inevitable decline. It's a pivot point for lifelong health, resilience, and quality of life. That's really important to me. Like, I don't, again, want to live longer if I'm not living healthy. All right, number 5, women took the mic in medicine and research and advocacy. The 2025 FDA review, changing hormone therapy labeling and renewed public discourse reflects the shifting paradigm that decisions about women's health are increasingly being shaped by women, clinicians, researchers, advocates. The framing of hormone therapy as nuanced individual care rather than a blanket risk reflects that medicine is emerging from a male default mindset. It's really important here because we are not little males running around. We're having more research in the longevity space, the health space, the menopause, the bone space, and they're being led by women. And that midlife women are bringing lived experiences, clinical insight, long overdue attention to the real needs of this population. So as a result, the conversation is shifting from what's safe to what's optimal, from reactive disease management to proactive health span investment. So I think it's kind of cool. This isn't just medicine catching up, it's women reshaping medicine. And that's pretty cool stuff. The shift elevates empathy and context and individual agency as core to care. Now, remember, the FDA's 2025 action does not remove all warnings from every hormone therapy product. We know that systemic estrogen alone therapies still carry warnings for endometrial cancer under certain conditions. Obviously, those with the uterus, if you're not giving an appropriate progesterone, whether it be synthetic or non-synthetic, the evidence for long-term benefits such as, cardiovascular protection, dementia prevention, these remain more suggestive than conclusive, right? These are not used for primary prevention, but we do know that when you're used under the right conditions, so younger age, timing, dose, route, that we have better outcomes and we have decreased risk associated with cardiovascular disease when started at the appropriate time. The gut hormone bone axis shows promising associations, but the science is still evolving. Microbiome research is complex, context dependent, and often population specific. And as with any therapy or intervention, hormone therapy, bone-directed medications, microbiome modulation, these are all individualized risk-benefit assessments, and though that remains very essential. So really, we are witnessing a paradigm shift in midlife women's care from fear-based risk avoidance to evidence-based empowerment. And hormone therapy is re-emerging as valid, nuanced tool when used correctly, appropriately. Gut health and bone health are no longer afterthoughts. They are key players in longevity and wellness in midlife and beyond. Midlife is less a crisis and more a strategic crossroad, a time to invest in long-term health, strength, resilience, and quality of life. And really, these things need to be started in our younger population, you guys, our pediatric patients. Being, good exercise, eating well, getting enough sleep. This really shouldn't be started at your age. This should be started with our young children. But I digress. Women voices as patients, clinicians, scientists, advocates are driving these changes. And as providers and educators, it's our job to amplify those voices, translate the evidence, and help women make informed, empowered choices. So let's translate those big shifts into what's coming next. Interesting stuff. So things like precision hormone mapping, researchers moving toward personalized hormone therapy using genetics, metabolism, data from wearables, not just age and symptoms. It's kind of fascinating stuff. Pharmacogenomics work has already shown that genetic differences in estrogen metabolism and receptor pathways may change how women respond to hormone therapy. This is obviously not in clinic. 2024 to 2025 reviews on AI and menopause management describe algorithms that can analyze labs, genetics, treatment responses to fine-tune dosing and predict who is more likely to benefit or have adverse effect. Again, fascinating stuff, not in clinical use. And obviously no big randomized clinical trials, right? So it'd be interesting how to see how this pans out, to see if, like, based on your genetic, certain enzymes, circadian rhythm, that these formulations and that formulation might work better for you instead of trial and error. Because it is trial and error right now. And sometimes that can be really frustrating for women, especially our perimenopausal women. Other interesting bone regeneration, AI enhanced DEXA, bone health tech is moving from the simple T-score printout to integrated risk prediction tools. AI models can estimate bone mineral density and fracture risk from existing imaging, like a hip X-ray or low-dose devices, sometimes without a full DEXA scan. Interesting, right? Portable devices in development with machine learning, they all aim to triage who truly needs full imaging and early treatment. I think it's all really fascinating, you guys, all the stuff. Who knows what's going to happen next year? So, the treatment for your bone, already anabolic agents such as your parathyroid hormone, PTH-related peptide analogs, I cannot ever say them, abaloparatide, teriparatide, these are already being used for women at high risk or high fracture risk, especially those who have failed or intolerant of bisphosphonates. You guys, to me, bone density is one of the hardest treatments. Honestly, I refer those to my colleagues that really do an amazing job. So insurance covered continuous bone monitoring like CGMs doesn't exist yet, but it'd be interesting, right? I'd like to see CGMs just be covered because I think they give fascinating data. Let's see what else here. So menopause and metabolic medicine. So we have known for a while that postmenopausal women have a significantly higher risk of metabolic syndrome compared with premenopausal women. And this is largely tied to estrogen decline and, of course, aging as well. So interesting how we may intervene in this. Things like combined aerobic and resistance training can help improve biomarkers like fasting insulin and your HOMA-IR in postmenopausal women, especially with those with diabetes or metabolic syndrome. We know that exercise trials in midlife women repeatedly demonstrate improvements in body composition, inflammatory markers, insulin resistance with structured training programs. It can be tough to do all this, but GLP-1s are constantly new data on them. I think we're just going to continue to see just really fascinating data and research on GLP-1s and then the newer medications that are retatrutide, which is still in trial. I think the future isn't going to be take this one drug and hope. It's going to be more integrated metabolic care with hormones, movement, muscle, medications that are designed specifically for you. And of course, brain health is becoming a central pillar of midlife medicine. Women have roughly double the lifetime risk of Alzheimer's compared with men. And, it's scary. We know that there is some menopause related estrogen decline seems to play a role. We need a lot more research on this. It's interesting to see that more studies are probing how estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone affect brain glucose metabolism, neuroinflammation, mood, and cognition across the lifespan. So brain health is officially on the agenda. So, we understand hot flashes and night sweats. We also understand that those hot flashes and night sweats affect our brain, right? Those hyperintensities in the brain. And, we're trying to figure out how what hormones mean for your memory, your mood, your long-term cognitive resilience. And then we talk about environmental impact, right? Quantifying things like the environment is not neutral when it comes to hormones in midlife, review of endocrine disrupting chemicals, PFAS, BPA, phthalates link higher exposures with early menopause, more vasomotor symptoms, altered sex steroid levels, and markers of diminished ovarian reserve. In certain countries, they've moved to expand restrictions on endocrine disruptors, including bans on certain bisphenols and PFAs in consumer products, and implementing class-based restrictions on specific PFAS starting in 2026. And in the US, EPA has proposed stricter PFAS reporting and regulation with key rules projecting around 2026, and endocrine societies are pushing for broader bans on EDCs in consumer products. Not a bad thing, huh? So, it's women's health isn't just clinic based anymore. It's about, your air, your water, your food packaging, your personal care products, and the policies that govern them. So the theme across all 5 areas is the same: more precision, more prevention, more female specific data, more agency for women making decisions in midlife. So as I look back on this year, my first as a founder and nearly 20th as a physician, I'm more energized than ever because this isn't about catching up. It's about finally leading. We're redefining what it means to age well, to live fully, to stay strong in the second half of life, to be entrepreneurs, to be founders, to be thought leaders. And I'm honored to be part of the generation that gets to practice medicine in this moment. To every patient who asks the hard question, every clinician pushing for better data, and every woman refusing to be dismissed, this progress is yours too. So here's to 2025. The women's medicine moves from conversation to transformation, and very excited to see what 2026 is going to have in store. So if this episode gave you clarity or courage, make sure you subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen so you never miss the Founder Series. Make sure if you listen to Apple Podcasts that you like and review, leave a rating. It helps other women find the science-based midlife care. And you are a clinician and want CME, you can listen to this on the Pinnacle app. If you're ready for your own personalized care, you can visit osteopathicmidlifehealth.com to book your consultation. You can also join the newsletter for weekly insights, research updates, sometimes some really good recipes, and practical ways to thrive in midlife and beyond. I'm Dr. Rebbecca Hertel, and this was 5 breakthroughs that define women's health in the last year. The revolution is already here, and it's female-led.